favorable motion for Vice Chair Kagan. Is there a second on the, again, the withdrawal from Senator Watson?
Sorry, can I
Yes.
ask the question?
Sure.
So I understand obviously that we're going to defer to her wishes. Are there two Cameron Cardin bills then? Thank you. So just to be clear, so there is still a Cameron Cardin bill. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Okay.
So there was duplication here. And
Perfect.
They didn't
So
compare notes. Yeah.
Move
Okay, so we have an
unfavorable.
unfavorable second from Senator Watson. All in favor of the unfavorable on the withdrawal bills, Senate Bill 828, raise your hand. All opposed. Okay, that's an unfavorable, carries unanimously. So now let's go back to some of the bills that we held. We'll start with Senate Bill 29. And if you recall, in the special election bill, there was a fair amount of discussion about the campaign finance component. There seemed to be a little discomfort with that. Just reading the room. And so I guess I would let the sponsor of the bill propose that we maybe make that modification based on what we heard from the folks, and we can open up some discussion. But Senator Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there is literally one member of the General Assembly currently who would benefit from this piece. I think it's small. I think it may not even happen again in the future. And it made some people uncomfortable. So I'd like to move that we use the amendments that Stacy did that conform Senate Bill 29 to the equivalent House Bill 412. And so it looks exactly like the bills that we have passed in the past unanimously.
Yeah, there's reference to the land bill. So
The
the whole issue of that we're going to create some special deal for fundraising and all that, that's not going to be part of this vote. But yeah, Senator Augustine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate what the senator has said, but it raised for me just the issue, the larger issue of what you're trying to do, which is like you're saying you're trying to make it so that a person who is appointed so late is not sort of given this like unbelievable disadvantage because the election is so close. And you were trying to address that issue. And I appreciate that that's what you were trying to do. I think it's still an issue. And I'm wondering if we could not, I didn't give it an amendment, but I thought about it last night. Could we move the date, like say that the appointment has to happen 30 days before the opening of session in order for it to become to go to the special election? Because then that would ensure that a person who was appointed would have, sufficient time to be able to raise money or whatever, and not really be sort of disenfranchised in a way, but then would it while still allowing for us to still have those elections and stuff like that.
One just thought, and then let's open it for discussion. I'll defer. I brought back to the example of my own Delegate Foley, appointed in December. The only thing I guess the issue of, the disenfranchised, I mean, the reality is incumbency is a huge advantage. So, the folks who come in late are here for 3 or 4 months. And if you look back at the folks who came in late and then had like one session before the election, spending 3 or 4 months down here, not being able to fundraise, but being, using incumbency, press, whatever, I think almost every time they've actually won. So this issue that this huge disadvantage, I think, because they can't fundraise, I'm not sure. I know that in, my district, it didn't turn out to be, she won overwhelmingly without literally being able to fundraise for 3 months. So I just come at it from the standpoint, there's this sort of default position that because you can't fundraise, you are at this major disadvantage relative to a newcomer who can, when in fact that could be counterbalanced arguably in part because you're here 3 months legislating, passing bills, being in the press. I just put that out for some just, conversation, but let's open it up.
Just in response to that, I understand what you're saying about that, but I'm really, what I'm talking about is like really quite narrow. So we had a delegate who was appointed very close to the session. So she's brand new. Like she's absolutely brand new. And under this bill, she would be on the ballot in May. And I'm saying, like, she's trying to figure out, she's learned, she's here, she's doing, trying to do the job of the people. Like, I'm talking just very narrow and not having an ability, the 30 days. Like, if she had been appointed and had the opportunity to know she's going to have to run, right? Just 30 days, that then at least it's an opportunity to be in a better place versus, and when you're there, we're rushing so that people are not disenfranchised, not having somebody in the office in that very last minute. I just think that person, I'm very specifically talking about that. And we actually do have someone just like that.
Thank you, Senator Augustine, for cogitating on this overnight, because your brain cells work in good ways. I have two things. One is, so she was sworn in, as you said, like January 8th. It was
Something like that.
minutes before
Mhm.
session started.
Mhm.
If she had been sworn in 30 days in advance, let's say that was possible. So let's say it was December 11th.
Yes.
I might suggest that that's a lot with the holidays and New Year's and all that for her to try to do that. So I don't know whether that helps her or not.
Oh, I know for
but
certain that it does.
It does?
Given
Okay.
the practices
Okay.
of what happens in the last 30 days
Sure.
prior to us coming to session. I mean, that's more than I'm saying. I think that's more than sufficient time. If you know you've got an election
Right.
that's coming and that you need to get out there and get your people who are supportive of you
Sure.
to raise some money, like to do it and
Right.
to be in a better pot, I think 30 days is enough.
So the other thing for your consideration is an incumbent could die or retire in a way that doesn't work with that timetable. And remember that the appointments by the central committees don't happen overnight because the vacancy has to be publicized. People have to apply, they have to show up, they do the things. So if somebody literally dies on December 15th or 20th or something like that, or retires, it may not work that a new appointee would even have the 30 days, as well-intentioned as that idea. So
No, what I'm saying is that therefore I'm just saying there's a trigger point, right? Right now, there's a trigger point where the special election will or will not occur, right? Under what's being proposed, it's the same thing. So if the person died, and I don't know where it is, Stacey can tell us where the trigger is. So so where is the trigger right now? So because is the trigger,
55 days, I think, is before the primary, isn't that right, Stacey?
is that the trigger?
To allow for the fundraising?
No, that initiates the special, where is the trigger? That's what I'm talking about. Where is the trigger for the
Yes.
initiation
Mhm.
of a special election? That's what I'm
Right,
asking.
they have to be on or before 55 days before the filing deadline. Is what 55 days before the candidate filing deadline for the regular statewide election is the trigger.
Okay, well then my issue might be okay then. So it may have already been fixed then.
Because like the filing deadline was
it's-
February 9th or something this year.
And how is that set? Because I think that might do what I'm
55
asking.
days before.
Because 55
February,
days before the 9th of February is about what?
December. Something.
I mean, if it's fixed, it's fine. I'm good. How is that date set?
That's set through making sure that everything is handled in enough time to get ballots overseas and stuff for our troops, and it's some of that is federal law. And Stacey, you can probably speak to that a lot better than I can.
Right, I mean, a lot of that is just, they work backwards. So you have the date of the primary or the date of the election, and then federal law requires 45 days before that. They have to mail out the ballots to overseas and military voters.
Right.
So obviously counting back from that, then they have to figure out how many days it takes to print, how many days it takes, all of that stuff. So I didn't come up with it. I'm just.
Yeah.
Well, if you recall, we used to have a September primary in Maryland,
Mhm.
had to be moved back simply because of the overseas ballot issue by federal law. So we moved our September primaries back. So it is a lot of it driven by federal law. Okay, well, this is a legitimate conversation. So
Okay, so it
55
might be,
days,
because
yeah.
if February 9th, about 30 days is about when we open session, that's 30. So then it's another 25 days. So it's likely somewhere in the middle of December based on the way it is right now. And if that is the case, then forget what I said, because that's what I was asking for.
So that's how it would have played out this year with the February 9th filing deadline, 55 days. Okay, well, any other thoughts on this? Again, you know, it's an important issue. We want to really make sure everybody understands or has other options or ideas. You know, the conversation yesterday yielded an adjustment here, so maybe we'll stumble on something even else. Okay, Senator Croza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And kind of putting aside the amendment and the fundraising component, just put that aside. We keep hearing references to, we've gone back to the land bill. And so can we just walk through, and because I went back and looked at Senator Kagan's testimony, can we, because we're talking about the legislation and we're talking about another proposal, can we just walk through what the current system is? What is actually in front of us right now? Because I'm mixed up between the references to Senator Lamb's bill and then HB 412. So
Yeah, we'll let Senator Kagan do it, but it's actually not that complicated. I mean, it's a really simple.
Yeah. Okay, so today, currently, without this bill, without this constitutional amendment, today, there's a vacancy, someone retires, someone dies, someone leaves office, legislative office only, Maryland General Assembly. The central committee of that party does their process, picks their person, that person's name goes to the governor appoints the person is sworn in. And that is 4 years. That is from the day after November's general election to the end of a term. That is today. This bill, as amended, as opposed to be amended with not the fundraising piece, just matching House Bill 412, which was the compromise that was crafted in the House, would say that if there were a vacancy, I'm going to say the first 2 years, but that is imprecise, so I'm going to fix it. But generally, the concept is the first 2 years, the central committee selections, having been appointed by the governor, would then face the voters and have their name on the presidential ballot for ratification at the 2-year point.
did in-person voting.
It's the election. It's the presidential primary election. So that person would then face the voter. They would be an incumbent. Potentially, they would already have been serving for up to 2 years or something close to that, minus the 55 days. If there were a vacancy closer than 55 days before the primary or through the end of the term, that person would then be appointed and serve, and then have the option of running for a full 4-year term or not to. They could be a placeholder or decide they don't like the job or something, but then just democracy works in year 4.
Okay, Sir Croza, so again, all we're really changing here, the Central Committee is still doing the
Making the
appointment.
picks.
The only difference really is we're precluding somebody from serving out a full 4-year appointment without ever having been subjected to the voters. So, and the criticism's always been, if you go special elections, it's very expensive. This is saying that we already have polls open, where people are already going to the polls in the midterm presidential. You're going to have to face the voters in that midterm. If this happens in years 3 and 4, you're on the same side. So we're just injecting some democracy in the midterm. Everything else, as far as how people vote, it's all this going to be the same. It's like you're being, that's basically in effect all the bill does. It preserves the current system with that one modification. What's
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Correct.
Fundraising, that's now been removed.
That is, okay, I thought I was clear about that, but there will be no fundraising,
Okay.
anything. It's
That's what's
just,
in front of us now.
it's what
Okay.
you voted for in the past.
Okay.
There's a motion on the amendment and that was second, so I think it's to vote for the amendment now
Well, it's
or discuss.
it's the amendment that does not include this stuff about, this set of rules for fundraising. We're not excluding that. Everybody clear about that based on the conversation? So we have that amendment.
We are excluding that. You said not excluding.
I'm sorry,
that,
we
not
are
including that. We are.
correct. We are excluding. That is not part of the amendment. Okay, we have a favorable motion.
Favorable.
Okay, is there a second? Senator Watson, okay. Okay, we'll do a roll call again. Constitutional amendment. We want to make sure everybody's on the record on this kind of thing,
All right, Senator Kagan,
on the amendment.
Senator Kagan, yes. Senator Augustine. Yes. Senator Augustine, yes. Senator Gallion. Yes. Senator Gallion, yes. Senator Watson. Yes. Senator Watson, yes. Senator Lewis Young.
Yeah.
Senator Lewis Young, yes. Senator Brooks.
Yeah.
Senator Brooks, yes. Senator Carozza?
Yes.
Senator Carozza, yes. Senator Hester?
Yes.
Senator Hester, yes. Senator Washington?
Yes.
Senator Washington, yes. Senator Salmonere?
Yes.
Senator Salmonere, yes. And Senator Feldman?
Yes, the amendment carries unanimously. We have the bill, Senate Bill 29 as amended in front of us. Is there a motion on the table? Favorable motion. Is there a second? From Senator Gallion. We're going to make this bipartisan constitutional amendment. We have Senate Bill 29 as amended in front of us, and we're going to do, again, a roll call on the favorable motion as amended.
All right, Senator Kagan?
Aye.
Senator Kagan, yes. Senator Augustine?
Yes.
Senator Augustine, yes. Senator Gallion?
Yes.
Senator Gallion, yes. Senator Watson?
Yes.
Senator Watson, yes. Senator Lewis Young?
Yes.
Senator Lewis Young, yes. Senator Brooks?
Yes.
Senator Brooks, yes. Senator Carozza?
Yes.
Senator Carozza, yes. Senator Hester? Senator Hester, yes. Senator Washington?
Yes.
Senator Washington, yes. Senator Salmonere?
Yes.
Senator Salmonere, yes. And Senator Feldman?
Yes, that constitutional amendment carries unanimously. Senate Bill 29. We're going to next move to Senate Bill 148. Dara?
Senate Bill 148, Comprehensive Flood Management Grant Program, funding for underserved and overburdened communities. This bill establishes annual mandated funding of at least $20 million beginning in fiscal year 2026 for the Comprehensive Flood Management Grant Program, and requires that 40% of funding under the program go to projects located in or directly benefiting underserved or overburdened communities. There are two amendments. The first amendment removes the mandated appropriation. Instead, the governor is authorized to include in the annual state budget an appropriation for the program up to $20 million. Under this amendment, the 40% requirement would remain. There is also an amendment which would add areas in which over 90% of households are at extreme risk of flooding in the next 30 years to be included in this 40% carve out.
Okay, I think Senator Gallion, I think you held it yesterday with a question, so let me yield to you.
Yeah, so I'd just like to thank Senator M. Washington for working in this amendment, that second amendment that was mentioned out, that addresses my concerns I had with that port deposit community. So thank you.
Okay, with that said, any further discussion about the bill? Somebody, yes.
Just to make one comment on port deposit, I looked at the MDE's, they have an EJ screening tool map on their website. My understanding of the software and looking at the criteria for an underburdened community is that port deposit is classed as an underburdened community.
Okay, any further?
Oh, pardon me, overburdened. Sorry, I'm mixing up overburdened and underserved. Yeah, apologies, overburdened.
You know, I knew that, but I just thought do an extra
Okay,
minute.
okay, any other questions on the amendments? Is there a motion favorable on the amendments? Sir, Senator Gallion, do you want to move favorable on the amendments? Okay, is there a second from Senator Washington? Okay, all in favor of the amendments, raise your hand on Senate Bill 148. Raise your hand. All opposed. Amendment carries unanimously. We've got Senate Bill 148 as amended in front of us. Is there a motion? Okay, Senator Lewis Young, a second from Senator Augustine. Yeah, okay. Anybody want to be on the bill as a sponsor? We've got Brooks, Hester, Washington, Lewis Young, Watson, Augustine, and Kagan. Okay, that is, we're going to incorporate that amendment. Okay, all in favor of the sponsor amendment also. We're going to add that on there. That carries unanimously. Okay, now we have Senate Bill 148 as amended with the sponsor amendment and the other amendment in front of us. Is there, do we have a most favorable from Senator Augustine? Second, Senator Lewis Young. Okay, all in favor of the bill as amended, Senate Bill 148, raise your hand. All opposed, that bill carries unanimously. We're going to next go to you, Stacy, on Senate Bill 165.
Senate Bill 165, Education Coaches Mental Health Training. This bill requires each public school in the state that offers a mainstream athletic program and each public institution of higher education that offers an athletic program to provide specified mental health training to each participating coach. The Maryland State Department of Education must work in collaboration with the Maryland Department of Health and each local board of education and the Maryland Public Schools Secondary Athletic Association to develop guidelines for public schools to train coaches in recognizing the indicators of mental illness and behavioral distress in students, including depression, trauma, violence, youth suicide, and substance abuse. Likewise, the Maryland Higher Education Commission must work with MDH to develop guidelines for public institutions of higher education to train coaches in recognizing the indicators of mental illness and behavioral distress in students. There is one amendment, it's separate from your packet. It's from Senator Hedelman, and it just cleans up some terminology in there. That's it.
So we have some technical amendment. But before we do that, let's open up for some questions. Senator Watson. Okay, move the technical amendment. Senator Watson, is there a second? Senator Lewis Young. Okay, all in favor of this cleaning up technical
Can I
amendment?
add an amendment?
Oh, yes. absolutely.
Sponsor.
Okay, on top of that, who would like to be on the bill? We've got, everybody ready? Brooks? Okay, raise your hand right now if you want to be a co-sponsor bill. Brooks, Hester,
Young, you're already on.
Washington, Simon Air, Feldman, Kagan, Augustine, Watson, and Lewis Young's already on there, and Carozza. Okay, everybody? And so we have the technical amendment, the co-sponsor amendment. Okay, so do we already vote on the prior amendment? I can't recall the technical amendment. Okay, we'll could put that into the one vote. All in favor of the technical amendment / co-sponsor amendment, raise your hand. All opposed, that amendment carries. Now we have the bill in front of us, Senate Bill 165. Okay, we've got a motion from Senator Watson, second from Senator Augustine. All in favor, Senate Bill 165 is amended. Yes, raise your hand. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want a discussion first? Okay, before we take a vote, let's strike that. Discussion, Senator Gallion.
So, there were some unfavorables on this, Maryland Association of Boards of Education. It looks like the amendment just was kind of like some cleanup stuff, but I take it they're still opposed for the reasons they said that.
Stacy, yeah.
In the written testimony, they talked about an unfunded mandate. But the cost of this, they determined it's a cost benefit analysis. It's just training. It's 2 hours long. It's to each coach. The coaches aren't required to do anything. It's just an awareness and training type program. So it's a decision of you whether that's a good benefit or a good cost benefit for that.
I think I would say, I think historically, anything that's quote an unfunded mandate, I think there's a philosophical thing. I think in this case, I mean, it's a pretty de minimis, but I think philosophically, no matter what the bill is, if it's an unfunded mandate, they just take I think that's what they stated. They didn't say that it was expensive, but that said, that's policy call for this committee. Okay, so in light of let's do a roll call. We have the motion. Unless you want to, okay, then never mind. Strike that. All in favor of the bill as amended, Senate Bill 165, raise your hand. Okay, all opposed, Senate Bill 165 as amended carries unanimously. We're going to go back to you, Dara. We've got some departmental bills. Senate Bill 268.
Senate Bill 268, Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal Based Critical Area Program Enforcement. This is a departmental bill that makes some technical changes to address the variety of enforcement procedures and processes that exist among local critical area jurisdictions. The bill also repeals a 30-day waiting period before the chair of the Critical Area Commission may refer certain enforcement matters to the Attorney General. And lastly, expands the authority of the Attorney General to take certain equitable actions to include critical area violations of an order, permit, plan, local program, the critical area law, or regulations adopted, approved, or issued under the critical area law. There are no amendments. There was no opposing testimony provided at the bill hearing.
Okay, discussion? There are no amendments. Okay, yes, Senator Carozza.
I'm just trying to better understand this. When it talks about expanding the authority of the Attorney General. What,
Could
what,
you
ex-
clarify that a bit?
what expansion of powers are we talking about?
So currently, the Attorney General may, on page 3 at the bottom of page 3 of the bill, may bring an action in equity to compel compliance or restrain non-compliance with the requirements of the existing languages, approved project plans. The bill changes this to an order, a permit, a plan, a local program, this subtitle or regulations adopted, approved, or issued under the subtitle.
So the Attorney General's on record that they need their powers expanded in this area?
So the critical area commission is described as a clarification of the conditions under which an attorney general may bring an enforcement action.
While you're, Sir Caruso, do you want to yield to Senator Simon Air? He had another, and then we'll go back to you. Need some more. Yes, Senator Simon.
So who has the power now? Is it the critical area can bring it for a permit or something, and they're shifting it to the AG?
No, currently the power is with the attorney general.
But I thought this was giving them that power.
I think it's clarifying
Yeah,
what he already has, but it's a little unclear.
So
about the-
is it current practice and they're codifying it? Or is it transfer of who does it?
I don't believe it is a transfer of it. I think it is a clarification of the scope of let's see what terminology was used, the conditions under which they can.
So are they
Enforce.
currently using this power and we're just codifying it? I'm just trying to figure out what it's doing.
And they're currently using this power. My understanding of this bill is that it's clarifying because at a local level that there's a wide variety of how these kind of enforcement procedures or processes are carried out. And this language has just been put in to clarify that the Attorney General's enforcement power encompasses all of the jurisdiction's different
Okay, so
terminology.
it's not taking it from the county enforcement
No.
and giving it to them.
Correct.
AG has it now, they're
Yeah.
just clarifying
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Any further questions for Dara about this piece of legislation? Okay, there are no amendments. Does anybody want to move the bill?
No.
Okay, Vice Chair Kagan moves favorable on the bill. Is there a second? Senator Lewis Young. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the bill, raise your hand. Okay, all opposed. We have 10-1 vote, I believe. That bill Senator Caruso, 10-1, bill carries. Next, we're gonna let's stay with you, Dara. We have Senator Gallion has a bill, Senate Bill 533. Why don't we pick that up? Senator Gallion. Senate Bill 533.
Senate Bill 533, fishing and hunting licenses and trout stamps, complimentary licenses and stamp exemption, veterans determined to be unemployable. This bill authorizes the Department of Natural Resources to issue a lifetime complimentary angler's license, a lifetime complimentary Chesapeake Bay and coastal sport fishing license, or a lifetime complimentary hunting license to a Maryland resident who certifies that the resident is an American veteran who the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs determines is unemployable, or an out-of-state person who certifies that the person is an American veteran who the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs determines is unemployable and whose state of residence extends similar privileges. There is one amendment that corrects a cross-reference in the bill. There was no opposition at the bill hearing.
Okay, Senator Gallion, do you, anything else you want to add? It's your bill.
Vice Chair Kagan had some questions and I think they got worked out, correct?
Yeah. So I just want to thank Senator Gallion for his indulgence in giving me another evening to work on this. Delegate Griffith and I had a 10:30 p.m. educational session on unemployable and what that means versus veterans' disability and the percentages. And I learned a lot. And so I thank both the senator and the delegate for this education. And it's important. And it's a small number of people, but we should help them.
Okay, Senator Gallion, would you want to move that amendment that was referenced? Okay, a motion, move the amendment from Senator Gallion. Is there a second from
Second.
Senator Kagan? All in favor, amendment raise your hand. All opposed, the amendment carries unanimously. We now have Senate Bill 533 in front of us as amended. Is there a motion? Motion favorable from Senator Gallion, a second from Senator Kagan. All in favor of Senate Bill 533 as amended, raise your hand. Okay, all opposed. Senate Bill 533 as amended carries unanimously. Let's go to Stacy on Senate Bill 271.
Senate Bill 271, Election Law Revisions. This departmental bill makes changes to state election law relating to: one, information that clerks of specified courts report to the state administrator of elections; two, the use of public buildings for early voting centers; and three, the ability of an incumbent member of a political party central committee who is a candidate for party office to act as a responsible officer of the central committee. There is one amendment in your packet on page 3 with a reprint on page 5. This amendment makes two changes. First, it alters the information that the county and state courts are required to report to the State Board of Election or the state administrator to include the names and addresses of an individual convicted of a felony and sentenced to imprisonment with commitment papers each month instead of once annually. And then each local board is required to establish an appeals process to allow public officials who's responsible for a public building that the local board requests be used as an early voting center. The process must be concluded 8 months prior to the date a local board must submit the names for early voting centers to the State Board of Elections.
Okay, questions for Stacy on that amendment? I've got, let's go Senator Watson, then we'll go Senator Gallion.
Thank you. Stacy, when I read this, there was discussion about felons, right?
Mhm.
And so this does not impact a former felon who has served their sentence from being able to do certain things. does
No,
it?
in 2016, the disqualification from the voter rolls was a felon that is currently serving imprisonment for the conviction. So
Only
what
current
happens,
felons.
right? So when they're sentenced to imprisonment, they're disqualified from voting, they take them off the rolls. And so what happens now is the state administrator gets a list from the courts that only has the names and addresses. It doesn't talk about whether they're actually sentenced to imprisonment or not. So this change will actually give them the information that they need in order for them to fulfill their obligation.
Okay, Senator Gallion.
Yeah, so are these amendments directly because of the judiciary's opposition or?
Yes.
So are they now?
Right, there's been negotiations behind the scenes. And so this particular amendment is approved by the AG over at the State Board of Elections, says the with commitment papers, meaning the courts have the information to give to the state administrator in order for them to actually do what they need to do.
So this would, I mean, because it was pretty strongly worded where they came in originally. When,
If I could just interrupt Judge Morrissey, I mean, he came in here with the judiciary. We kind of put them together with the Board of Elections and the AG's office, and they've come up. So, you
so
know,
with this, their opposition will be removed then.
that's my understanding.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So, okay, additional questions for Stacy on what the amendment does? Okay, this amendment, I do think resolves that issue for the judiciary. Okay, all in favor? Okay, we need a motion on the amendments. Senator Kagan, second from Senator Watson. All in favor of these amendments, raise your hand. All opposed, the amendments carry. We now have Senate Bill 271 as amended in front of us. Senator Kagan's favorable. Senator Lewis Young, second. Okay, all in favor of Senate Bill 271 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, that bill carries unanimously, which brings us to our final bill of the day. Senate Bill 298. Alexis, that's yours.
Senate Bill 298, State Board of Electricians Licensing Penalties. This departmental bill brought by the Department of Labor grants the Board of Electricians the option to impose a civil penalty up to $5,000 for each violation, instead of or in addition to taking other penalizing actions like revoking or reprimanding the license. Before doing either, the board has to consider the seriousness of the violation and the harm reflected in the offense.
Are there any other amendments?
No amendments were submitted on the bill.
Questions for Alexis about the bill? Yes, Senator Lewis.
I had a constituent that it took him
10 months to get his license. And only because I intervened did he finally get it.
Mhm.
Single dad, sad story. So here's my concern. In trying to do some work, could this bill penalize a case like that? Are there any ties to ensuring that the relevant departments have a timely licensing process?
So with the electricians, there isn't an expedited licensing process. And I'm almost certain that there isn't the authority for a journey person or apprentice electrician to do their work without that license, essentially, right? Some you can do the work under supervision, et cetera, but you have to be licensed with the electricians board. So that sounds like that may be more appropriate for like an audit or something to resolve, if I'm addressing your question right.
I think you said something key.
Mhm.
In this particular case, this individual could have worked under supervision.
No,
No.
they couldn't have. They would have to be licensed.
Okay.
But there are different tiers, right? They can
Right.
have the apprentice, the journey, or the master electricians with different requirements for each. They would have to be licensed.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Senator Hester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had two questions. The first question is, can other boards impose civil penalties?
Yes.
Okay, and it's $5,000 generally what they do?
Yep.
Okay. And is there any requirement, like if what's if the reason if the violation is like a safety issue,
Mhm.
it seems like you would then want, I mean, depending on how bad the safety issue was,
Mhm.
it seems like they might want to revoke the license as opposed to giving them the fine.
Mhm.
It-
And they can.
And they can.
Yep. They'll
I-
still be able to do that.
Yeah, I don't love the way line 12 is worded. It says instead of or in addition to.
Right. So they'll retain the discretion if they only want to revoke the license instead of issuing that penalty, they'd be able to do that while the department themselves have that, authority to make that determination based off of the factors listed.
So
in line
we
16
have
through 22.
confidence then in the board that it will still continue for safety reasons to revoke licenses.
That they'll still have that authority.
Well, I know the top of the authority. I'm asking if we actually have confidence that they'll make the right decision.
Well, I think that's more of a political question, but they'll, certainly have the discretion to. There isn't anything that's tying them to, hey, in this event, you have to revoke a license or you have to suspend. It's just saying, here are the threshold factors that you have to consider if you decide to do it.
Place across all of our boards.
I wouldn't say all, but HVAC and plumbers in particular. And I think architects may be the same.
Okay, Senator Carozza. Again, if there's any, hesitation here, or we need to, we can always bump this to next week. We're not going to jam anything out if there's a lot of questions. Yes, Senator Carozza.
I went back to read the bill testimony and there was, and I apologize if I missed this earlier in the presentation, but there was a proposed amendment by the Chesapeake independent electrical contractors.
So the amendment sponsored by the local board, which is what Chesapeake Contractors is, essentially is intending to grant the locals the authority to assist in the state licensing. That wasn't proffered by any members here, so that's why it wasn't included in the packet. But if you want to consider it, I have a few comments on that one, but essentially the intent is to allow the local boards to intervene in this penalty process that we're considering now.
So, and the reason, if maybe we can withhold it, because this whole thing with the electricians and what we went through on other bills, there was a lot of back and forth with the locals. And I don't know if we're opening up now some of the,
Okay, good. Why don't we do this? Because again, I think we're still at a place where we're trying to move bills that, doesn't require a lot of time. If there's, sensing from just 3 or 4 questions here, why don't let's hold this, see if you can find out whatever information you have, whether it's Senator Lewis Young, clarifying language, Senator Hester, or whatever, Senator Carrozza. So we'll hold that, and that will put us at 6 bills passed today, plus the 11 yesterday. So we're sending 17 bills to the floor. I think that's a good week's work, and we jammed out a lot of. And by the way, next Thursday, Friday, again, we're going to have a pro forma next Friday. So we're hopefully this Thursday, Friday combo where we take a shot at some votes on Thursday, and whatever we don't make up, we can pick up the next morning. I hope that works next week as well, because that'll help. Yeah, I mean, we're starting out, next week, it's even going to get a little, so having this extra day where we can smooth things out, I think is extremely helpful. So with that all said, any other comments before we call it a day and call it a week? Okay, I have to go upstairs and present a bill, so I'm going to get out of here. Okay, so good job. I hereby declare our week's worth of work done and this hearing